Good afternoon to everyone, and welcome to our higher education webinar today, talking about the trends and the challenges of transformation in the education sector. I think we've got a great panel and content for you today. We're really going to cover over the next 40 minutes some aspects of the expectations of students' learning experiences and how they're changing with more and more penetration of all things digital into the education sector. Talk about some of the restrictions that we've seen over the last couple of years. Huge disruption in that sector. If we're honest, probably one of the most highly affected sectors that there is in terms of disruption. What digital transformation means to those those higher education institutions, and how an agile future looks for students and how we can meet their needs. I mean, it's fair to say, as I alluded to, that the last few years have been very, very tough for higher education institutions. But if we actually think about the influence of digital on higher education, the advent of MOOCs and digital learning, at-home learning has fundamentally caused an effect on traditional bricks and mortar universities. It's fair to say that there's also a level of expectation of flexibility of learning, of componentization of some of the product and course offerings that universities have, and also geopolitics as well as health crises have all had a massive impact upon the higher education space. So we're going to cover some of that today. I think we're going to have a great 40 minutes. And quite frankly, I am honored to have, some partners of Optimizely here in, two of our customers and one of our very trusted partners. So we have the University of Technology, Emma van Bloemsteen, Manager Marketing and Communications for UTS. And Ryan Bailey, Deputy Director of Marketing and Student Recruitment at the University of South Australia. Welcome to both of you. We also have Dylan Hicks, who's the MD of Sudo Roux, and someone that has really pointed their organization at specializing in digital transformation of higher education institutions. And Matt Sayer, the real brains trust of the organization there, Chief Technology Officer, deeply involved in delivering some of these successful projects like we see at UTS and University of South Australia. So welcome to all of you. As obviously a technology vendor, we are very, very pleased and happy to have you as our partners. And we really look forward to hearing from all of you on this really exciting and engaging topic. So Dylan, over to you, my friend. Take it away from here.
Great. Thanks, Paul. Great introduction. So I suppose, look, as Paul mentioned, it's no secret that students are demanding a very different experience to what they have previously. So if I might kick off with you, Ryan, what's your experience in terms of the key differences you've seen over the last handful of years in terms of what students are wanting and looking for from a university?
Yeah, I think, a huge question and a big space from here. We've seen students, I guess, wanting specifics in what unis are offering. No longer can you just wait for them to brush past and expect that they'll knock on your door. If I point out some of our particular customers, and only in the last 2 years, the audience will be very familiar that school students and indeed international students have shifted to online learning literally overnight. Now they're a digital native, as we know, so there's already something that unis had to deal with, as well as other institutions. I mean, for adults or us, our workplaces, our shopping, our ordering of the evening meal, all has a digital or online component, whether we like it or not. I mean, my kids these days, Dylan, can order room service without me even knowing it. So in a uni sense, if I go back to that, the physical lecture is now more or less extinct, and unis are flipping the classroom. Sure, everyone's aware of those sorts of buzzwords in this space. I guess unis and other industries need to keep pace with those customers. I'm sure we're all aware of that, acutely aware. And I guess we've tried to tap into that where we can. So an example, 2017, we really revamped our online learning models. And 5 years later, now we were one of the first to market back in the late 80s, 90s in this space. And doing that, I guess, in this recent state, we're now 5th in Australia around enrolment. So not to flex in that sense, but just to give you a sense of, if you get on board early and have a go, you can reap the results. I guess customers these days in their learning, but also in their engagement, just expect things to work. And we clearly see that from our feedback or our customer satisfaction scores. It really equates to, and something we've been working hard in, I'm sure Emma has as well, around providing clarity and certainty, which is sometimes hard, you know. An example, unis are pretty familiar sometimes in saying, we'll tell you your credit once you get in. That's not good enough these days. What sort of support will I get? And ultimately, what's the end result? So will I get some employment? Will I get that pay rise that I'm looking for? So I guess we see that in I guess we could translate it in a digital world to personalization. Our analogy we use locally is the concierge. So being clever, being relevant around those recommendations. In a time when learning, or students or customers, whatever we want to refer to them as, will show signs of fatigue. I mean, our audience today, good on you for jumping on a Zoom in this climate. You know, videos need to be relevant, and hopefully through Q&A or questions, we can also help answer some of those. So in terms of uni, it's the whole student life cycle. It's from application through to onboarding and doing that in a relevant way for the current student or the alumnus. So hopefully you're all connected in with your institutions that are out there. If not, I'm sure that they want to. I guess we're looking to try and define what is that path of least resistance or remove friction from this environment.
Yep. So I suppose, you know, we've had this conversation before, but what that ladders up to for me is what we see elsewhere with many of our other clients is this demand for a seamless experience, but not just at the front and not just at the back and not in the middle, but from the top of the funnel, from the first time they start speaking to you or researching or whatever, through to service delivery and through to that kind of alumni or lifelong learning journey, right? Would you say that's sort of roughly accurate?
Yeah, and I mean, my experience working across the institution is essentially everyone's has an aspect of that experience in their hands. And so working across large organizations, whether it be from a digital sense or just tuned into customers,
Yep.
I guess I'm always trying to work out what needs to sit on a dashboard or on a report from how do I get the customer voice? How do I understand where they're at?
Yep. Okay. So that's probably a good little seg into the next piece. And I might call you out here, Emma, given that, you know, to deliver personalization, we need some data. We need to know who our customers are, and we know you to be super data driven. So how do you go about measuring what a good experience is or isn't?
Well, unfortunately or fortunately, an experience is no longer just one thing. It's really a combination of delivering to your brand promise, how your customer consumes your product, how you interact and engage with your consumer at a marketing, but also at a sales level, also at the customer service level, and how your business processes meet and adapt to the needs of your customer. And I guess depending on how you look at it, whether it's lucky or unlucky, pretty much every behavior and interaction with our audience or customer is captured and is somewhat tracked through data. So the benefits of this really is we're able to learn, adapt, pivot, change in almost real time to optimize and really enhance this experience from this data. But then also taking a test and learn approach is a really great way to directly observe and gain really invaluable behavioral insights on what your customer is doing. And it doesn't really have to be big either. It can be as simple as like A/B testing, tactical versus emotive-driven messaging, for example, on your campaign landing page. It's really taking that small 1% measurable approach to enhance and optimize the experience. And, I know we talk about data a lot, but looking at it and actually turning it into insights really gives us the ability to do things like segment our audiences based on their certain behaviors and actions, and turn these insights into a personalized customer experience, like you said, Ryan. We really looked at, from a UTS point of view, really looking at how our technology can really underpin and drive insights and improvements to our customers' experience, like rolling out an education-focused CRM that is connected to the website, but also our shop front, is really our 360-degree view of the customer. And then that also gives us insight as to how the person interacts with us as an organization throughout their learning life cycle, but also how we service them as a customer, which is really important. We're really changing this notion of they're not just students, they're not going to just come to us, like you said before, Ryan. We do have to go out to them. So this shared view of the customer really helps us break down the internal silos that tend to happen in big organizations. But we're also able to see where the customer's at their learning life cycle stage, and deliver personalized comms to really enable their decision making.
Yeah, I think that, if I just touch on that notion of the shared view of the customer, right, is often something that gets lost when we talk about transformation or an increase in digital capability. Is it's not just about a line of business. It's not just about a marcoms or sales line of business. It's about the understanding of the customer for every line of business. Yeah,
exactly.
I think that's kind of pretty critical point. Okay. So Matt, I might move to you now. Obviously, you've worked with a wide range of educational institutions on the technology side. What's your approach to getting your clients on that kind of customer-centric customer experience journey?
Yeah, thanks, Don. I guess for me, like what we used to do in the past has probably changed a lot in the last 3 or 4 years. And I think now you've got to really start with problem framing, and just realizing now that it's never one specific event or a thing that triggers that watershed moment when people realize that things have to change within an organization. And that sort of that light bulb moment where in the client's mind, the realization is that to be successful, they need to put the customer at the center to get around the problems of service delivery that they're chasing at the moment. And so I guess, like, to start with the problem framing, I like to try and debunk a lot of the theories of, that it's always a platform, but really understand it's people and processes, and the 3 Ps are united there. And it's really, it's sort of trying to understand things when we try to problem frame that, you get this thing, everything's broken. Well, is it broken, or is it just that the website's not connected to the CRM? Or is it like, does the website not fulfill its purpose, or you're not authentically, representing your brand, or is it just the information architecture doesn't reflect what customers are looking for, or you're not, and then therefore they're not engaged, and the experiences that you're driving are not personalized. So, like, I guess we'd like to gather the facts and not labor over this, but be actually able to articulate what the problems are and what the problems we're going to solve. The two never the same. I guess from there, we try to sort of tend to assess and establish like a clear understanding of what a strategic approach to just not just the web, but content, services, utility looks like for the customer. At the same time, realize we're not the customer, so we're trying to be quite empathetic at that point. And from here, I guess I think what has changed, and what I probably recommend to everyone these days is, things have changed over the last 30 months, and I'm not going to labor over that, but also our customers have changed. And I think it's really critical to understand that whilst most of us have been in self-preservation mode as an organization, and even just as individuals, that what we used to think about our customers has changed. And so, like, I really like to start with revisiting the customer personas, because what we think they want and expect has really changed. And so you need to dust that view of the world off. And then, the markets and the channels that we're talking to them have changed. And so we're now almost always in a B2C, B2B, and a direct-to-consumer environment when we're dealing with organizations. So just actually having that. And then sort of, I guess, finally, if you find yourself in sort of a how to start in the sort of analysis paralysis mode. I like to say, choose one section, one challenge, one journey, and then actually just pilot what can or can't be done within to improve the customer experience within your current stack. And that is the best point to jumping off to then going, this will help identify what systems and platforms that have either been neglected from a software currency point of view. We see a lot of that there's been an underinvestment over the last 3 years in maintaining software and software capabilities. It also helps surface what gaps in capability or your architecture might be. And then the things that are really broken or are too far down the legacy path that need to be wrapped in cotton wool, put on life support whilst being replaced and work around is sort of comes out of that as well. So there's a fair few things to get started, but obviously if we can probably not just run off and just say everything's broken is probably the first step, and then break it down from there. So that's how we sort of get started.
Sorry, incrementalism, test and learn.
Test and learn, and it resonates to what Emma was saying. When we first started with UTS Open, it was Emma and I used to say to the business guys, we're 24/7 now. It's your path to conversion is no longer an 18-month, 2-year conversion. It's 60 seconds, guys. And this was then, and then all that's happened was COVID appeared. Everyone jumped online and just reinforced what we were saying. So that from a marketing point of view, we've really gone to always on. And in other lines of business, that was BAU, right? But in education, being always on was the biggest change in the last 2 years.
Yep. Customer doesn't switch off at 5 o'clock.
Not anymore.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So I think that the test and learn approach is probably actually how we met, Ryan, in terms of a particular student recruitment project. So, I mean, without wanting to labor the issue, like Matt said, the last couple of years have brought some real challenges in getting students on campus at all, let alone for a recruitment event. So I suppose I'm interested in hearing from you, Ryan, around your approach to delivering hybrid student recruitment events, because business doesn't stop. People still want to study. They're still finishing school. So what was your approach to that?
Yeah, so I guess we had the problem gifted to us as a lot of unis did. So yeah, to Matt's point, we didn't have to go looking very far, and we had to move pretty quickly. I reflect listening to Matt. You can either be a survivor in this or you can innovate. And I guess without going too far, we've tried to do that, even in a small sense. We've tried to take a chunk. I mentioned the mass lecture is dead. Well, a mass open day is even harder during obviously a health pandemic. So I guess we previously went from that mass model of thousands, 10,000 plus people walking through many locations and attending lectures and looking around. And we really had to really consider what were those objectives. So in a time when international students perhaps were a little harder to recruit, undergraduate programs became a core revenue stream. They still are, I'm sure in Emma's sense it is too. And so we really tried to look at, well, actually people get the concept of open days. They get a really good attendance. We know that there's going to be eyes and ears around that. So we, I guess, working particularly with yourself, Dylan and Matt, tried to really buckle down and say, well, what are our objectives? If we're not getting all the families and everyone coming along, if it's just the students, rather than 10,000, could we divide that by 3 if mum and dad aren't there? So could we hit a mark of 3,000 people online and or on campus coming along? And I'm pleased to say through a hybrid approach and using some clever digital products, we're piloting the Optimizely DXP through this. We were able to get over 5,000 registrations to get them onto an online platform. We were able to we had data, we could wash that against our CRM. So we worked out after sort of a 5 to 6 month, rather than a traditional 1 month focus on open days, we had over 3,000 new prospects or new leads come into the CRM. We could work through that. So we could apply a sales approach for there, and we saw a conversion. Now, knowing there's a broader touch points in the marketing mix, it won't just be the open day piece, but nearly half of those converted to applicants. So there's a really healthy sort of message in that we could see these students or these customers are ready to buy. Are we doing the right things? Throughout that platform, similar to what Emma's talking about around getting data insights and dashboards, we could see what they were doing. So they were looking at how to apply, they were downloading brochures, they were watching videos, and all of that was giving us pretty rich data to say, what are they interested in? What are their course sets or their choice sets? I guess to Matt's point, we could link it through to the wider business. So it wasn't just the technology or the setting some goals, we had to bring people along for that as well. So that CRM or those sales leads had to be engaged through to a sales team or inquiries team. And I'm pleased to say, not only from our digital folk who helped us build that, working together with some good partners, but then trying to land the sale was a really key part. So actionable data, I guess, is the key point that you've been talking about there.
Yep. And I suppose what you've just touched on there too is harks back to what Emma said around a shared view of the customer across lines of business. We've spoken about this before, about actionable data, that insight on a one-to-one or one-to-many basis, but on a one-to-one, it's the ability to say, this is a hot prospect that's not converting, and being able to get a more traditional phone sales team to call them and actually give them that concierge service, right? Or I suppose the other conversations we've had is around where there have been limited numbers campus tours, that the people running the events people on the ground know the preferences of the people in that small cohort and can speak to them on a one-to-one basis about what they're interested in, right?
Yeah,
rather than the sort of one-to-many comms.
Yeah, so personalization at its heart, and from a human sense, I guess, is what you're talking about here. Yeah, I mean, I mentioned, so it's an online platform, but we had to translate that to hybrid. So that was physical tours and taking registrations, knowing who they are, knowing their first name, and delivering that from there. Yeah, I guess in this, we tried to start simply and did build a dashboard. What's my key point? Make friends with the person who can build a dashboard in there and bring that data together. That did help us start small, and it does drive business. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, well, we've got another person on the call in the form of Emma who loves a good dashboard. So I suppose I might seg there and just say, Emma, what's your advice to an organisation that wants to put customer experience at the centre of their operation? Where do they jump off?
Well, kind of going off what Ryan was saying before, and data at the heart and humanizing the digital experience. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone and actually talk to your customer.
That's what's old is new, right?
Find out. Even your prospective customer, look, their experience with you really starts long before they've even considered making a purchase from you. An example is, like, at the beginning of last year, we piloted the university piloted a postgrad contact center dedicated to PG coursework conversions. So we've now scaled this up to be a university-wide initiative that covers UG outreach and short forms of learning interest inquiries, with data underpinning really how we operate. It's also kind of funny now, we've come full circle with our reliance on digitally interacting with our customers. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a time and a place for things like chatbots and things like that, but more often than not, your customer or your prospect just wants a human to help them and have somewhere to go, like an email, a phone number, social, but also taking into consideration low response rate. So being quite timely in how you respond to them can really enhance their experience with you. I think we can also be, as universities, a bit too passive in waiting for people to come to us, especially when it comes to talking to our customer or our prospect about what they want. So really getting on the phone can add a lot of value around validating and reassuring their decision to study. I often kind of make the analogy that education is not too dissimilar to the process you go through for when you decide to go traveling. The outcome can be life-changing. There's a financial consideration, there's a time investment, but it's also a decision and a big process journey that you go through along the way. So having someone to speak to like a travel agent, or someone on the other phone at a contact center can really help you validate and reassure your decision, which is really important. And I think this can be the experience that gets your prospect over the line, but also they can come back to you in the future. You know, we're trying to now look at our undergrads as soon as they walk in the door, they're alumni. So how are we looking at really being there at every stage of their learning throughout their lifetime, and really trying to put the customer at the heart of everything that we do when designing our experiences and servicing that at every step of the way. I think sometimes we can kind of get caught up in creating internal business processes that end up driving the end user or customer's experience. And again, this is where using data, especially given its objectivity, is a really great way to test and learn how your customers are behaving, but translate those behaviors into insights or an insight, and articulate the value to your internal stakeholders so that you can optimize and improve the customer's experience, but then also show to the customer that you really understand and you value them.
Yep. So, I mean, I think, you know, as Matt just said in the background there, you know, customer service, what's old is new again. Pick up the phone.
Do what you say you're going to do.
Totally.
Right? Like it's a really basic things that have been around forever. Answer the phone within three rings. Or when you take that to a marketing automation thing, like have the right drip, have the right funnel, have the right response rate, right? Have the right touch, and be relevant, right? That's all you can be, is relevant, and you know, people don't read it, then people don't read things, or people don't engage with it. Doesn't mean you don't do it right.
Exactly. I mean, I would sort of see if you've got anything more to sort of build on that. Like from a technical point of view, what are you thinking people should look out for in terms of, you know, putting customer experience at the heart of their organization?
Look, I think first thing to do is to understand as an organization where you are in your digital maturity, and with universities, it means they've been around the block and been around for a long time. And so there's a certain sort of tip over point where you start looking at platforms like what Optimizely offer, right? It's you're wanting to control the experience, right? So that means, you know, you're not saying good enough is will do. It means you want to be actually able to control everything from end to end. And so I guess, you know, you sort of need to, first of all, look, this is nothing different to what Ryan and Emma are saying, is as an organization, you've got to have a shared value of what the value of data is, right? Like that's just going to be a given. And then I guess if you're trying to then figure out what technology best meets this customer experience approach, is that, I guess, you know, understand what channels you're talking to your customers through, what the systems of engagement across content and marketing, commerce and analytics and optimization are doing or not doing, more of the case in a lot of scenarios. And then ask yourself how you're unlocking the value of unified data from either operational silos or those traditional legacy systems of record. And then, you know, step back again and then say, you know, if we're doing this, then you know, delivering modern and digital experiences really are, at the end of the day of today, it means it's an orchestration across multiple decentralized services and cross-cloud platforms. And that's a lot to take in, but what you need to do is make sure that you're choosing platforms and systems that are highly connectable, like that are API first or API centric, giving people a way to control and invoke the experiences that different systems will own. And that goes a long way to interoperability. So from a, you know, obviously there's this big, great vision of being everything to the customer, but as I like to bring up tools to support that, so that also gives you a bit of flexibility of switching things in and out and getting that best of breed solution.
Yep.
So it's definitely something to look out for.
Great. Thanks, Matt. We might, where we're coming up on the half-hour mark, so I might move to our kind of last question here. For you, Emma, where do you see the opportunities being in the learning space in the next, let's say, 5, maybe 10 years from a business perspective?
Well, the marketer in me says find your niche and exploit that niche. And and exploit it real good. In the space that I'm in, so short forms of learning is really competitive, and it's not slowing down. We're not only up against other tertiary institutions with reputations, we're also up against internal providers as well. And we even use some of them for our own, like LinkedIn Learning, for our own professional development. So market share is quite competitive at the moment. As a University of Technology, we really looked at designing short courses and micro-credentials that speak to our signature. So like data, business transformation, but then also co-designing them with our industry connections to meet their skills gap, but then also deliver at the pace of employer transformation and trying to achieve and closing that skills gap. An example is last year we worked really close with Telstra at an enterprise level on building internal capacity by designing micro-credentials around data literacy and technology which speak to our signature, but also addressing their skills gap with a co-designed suite of courses. So for the learner, the value to them is that they can then use these micro-credentials as recognition for prior learning. But for us, it's also a pipeline of learners, of leads into our potential postgrad funnel. So really, there's no secret recipe, but start small, test and learn from your insights, and then ensure it's scalable.
Yeah. I think if I just draw one key point out there, right? Delivery at the speed that industry demands, right? So we've got a client like Telstra, they want cohort X upskilled in machine learning or whatever the piece is, and they want it in the next 3 months. They don't want a 3-year degree. So there's this little reframing of what the immediate opportunity is, and then how, I suppose, our traditional forms fit in and around that, right? Yeah. Okay. Ryan, I might throw the same question at you around what you see the big opportunities being in the learning space from a business perspective in the next 5, and if we can even think about 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty exploratory stuff, and similar to what Emma was touching on. It's about how you keep pace. Some of this we're forced into, whether we like it or not, and if you're not, you need to get on board. I guess for us, we're trying to talk to this in very much a business-like sense, but translate that to those humans, humanize that as much as we can. So we talk about things like, the customer is the student, the product as the degree, as I've mentioned. And so product is really lead for us from a base level, and how we do that. Emma touched on the industry connections. I mean, UTS, UniSA are very similar based universities and technology-based unis. This is how they roll. They link with industry, they understand real needs, and they try and deliver solutions from that. So partnerships are really key. So learning in the future, I mean, realistically, co-creation of those products is a reality. And I think Emma touched on one from Telstra. That's a good one. We've just signed a fairly major partnership with Essentia, for example, and they will not only co-create, but co-teach our digital business degree. And there's a range of these examples that are out there, but really the degree or the product that the student's coming in to buy, I guess we want to make sure that is inherently relevant, no matter what. And ultimately, like I mentioned before, that they're conscious of the outcome. So are we. We trade on getting them their employment, and realistically their career is the language that we talk on. So, I mean, to your point, it doesn't take much to make a trial in this sense. 5 to 10 years is a long time in learning, as we've just seen over the last 18 months or so. And so I think how people can carve out, set themselves a challenge. And again, none of ours are that massive. We're trying to start small and crawl a bit here. There's still plenty that we could do with unlimited resources. And I guess my key point in how you do that, I still love a clever business case. There still seems to be, if you can attach to revenue, if you can return an efficiency, it still seems to get that CIO or the CFO's attention from there. And it's still a bit of a dark art, I suppose, that people need to practice.
Yep, certainly a skill inside a tertiary education institution, developing the compelling business case. So we're at the 40-minute mark. I might ask, do we have any questions, or should I throw something we've sort of set up previously? Paul, have we had any? I don't think we have. So I might maybe close on an issue around data, since it's been a theme of our entire presentation. So, privacy changes and restrictions to third-party data will continue to impact student recruitment activities, as it will all marketing activities. So, Matt, I'm really interested. I mean, I know this is a key passion area for you. So I'm really interested in your perspective on what the way forward is for universities and other marketing organizations.
Yeah, so there's two parts to it, really, isn't there? There's manage the identity of any systems that you federate, be they with a consumer, be they with a business customer, be they with an organization. So that sort of federation and management of identity. I know in both UTS's case of big proponent of this as a passion point, and resulted in the timely implementation of Okta as the identity federation. Very similar with UniSA. We used Okta as well as as an identity glue. So that just gives you a place to grab identity. What I think is really important now is to look at the use of data through the customer data platforms. That's really the next generation, and it's beyond the hype of a customer data platform I can deliver. So no longer we're looking around, when we talk around actionable data and actionable intelligence, getting things in real time or near real time. Both been really big proponents of the UniSA and UTS solutions as the customer data platform that Optimizely provided, that got those behaviors, that track the people from insight, from unknowns to knowns, to sort of aggregate what would typically used to be a business intelligence or a data lake driven thing that was always a post-process analysis, a post-analysis sort of view. I think the fact that the restrictions on the availability of third-party data only means it's just going to be critical for everyone, not just universities, but everyone, to really grab their first-party data and own it. It hasn't been a focus for today because you've always been able to buy audiences. But now, moving forward, I think the role of a CDP, the role of data, is probably something not to forget, because and actually seeing it in use and then actually watching it validate itself, absolutely completely powerful. So that behavior. So in Ryan's case, when that case came through to the sales people, they had behavioral, a script to almost be able to play back, and they already pre-personalized the response before they've even picked up the phone. Those are sorts of things that we're seeing that could really make a difference.
Great. Well, that's probably around time to close out. So Paul, shall I hand over to you, my friend, to lead us out? And thank you very much to Ryan, Emma, and Matt for a contribution here today on the webinar.
Yeah, look, thank you very much, Dylan. That was a really, really engaging conversation. Ryan and Emma, we're understanding the critical kind of drivers for you to keep on that digital transformation journey, the competitive landscape in terms of how you acquire and convert those customers, understanding that more and more you're effectively fighting that open market for the best experience from the first minute that someone has the interest in your university, and let's be honest, your brand, right through to when they leave with a degree in their hand. Digital experience is more and more becoming a fundamental and core part of that entire student life cycle for you. So we're really proud that you're driving down that path with us. And I think some of the key learnings from today from the Sudo Roux crew were fantastic in terms of, understanding the data, making sure that it's consistent and relevant, and also, delivering much more than a website, delivering an end-to-end experience, no matter what the touch point is, across social, across digital, across, any kind of touch point that those students have for the entire time that they're with you. So to thank you very much for your time. We do appreciate it. And to everyone that tuned in today, we hope you enjoyed the session, and any questions that you have, please feel free to send them through. We will send out contact details for those questions, and there will be a recording for anyone that has attended if you'd like to share that with any of your colleagues. So thank you very much, and have a good afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.